Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Dilmus, and I have with me the clown prince of percents, Travis Snell. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy weekend. Been still doing moving stuff. I built a table this week, which man, IKEA has some good stuff, but lots of parts and lots of things that I get quite frustrated. I'm not a builder type of person. That's not a thing that I like. I think me and my dad are that way. My dad was never a yard person. I grew to be one, but I'm not into building or fixing things. So anytime I got to build a bunk bed or that, but no, it's been a busy weekend. Had my mother, which we'll go into why I didn't play a certain game, but had my mother-in-law's birthday yesterday, and then my stepmother's birthday today. So it's been like on top of moving, it just feels like everything. And then next week's Thanksgiving, it just feels like, oh, this person's in town. Oh, we're doing this, and it's like, oh my god, like I'm waiting for a weekend where it's not even just to play games, just to just get. I'm looking at boxes right now, but other than that, it's going good. No complaints. It's all just that type of stuff. But I'm healthy. People are getting sick around me, so I know that's starting soon. So. Ugh.
Yeah, no, I'm still getting over that. Thank you to the
Not
boys,
Dylan.
Kirkland.
He's in Vancouver, so
Yeah, thank you to Kirkland and Taylor for covering for me last week. Well, Taylor was supposed to be on either way, but Kirkland jumped in last minute and hosted as well. So that was it's fun every once in a while for me to sit back and listen to an episode of SideQuest that I'm not a part of. So it was a fun time, and they had their goofy conversations and stuff too. Is always a good time as it usually is.
yeah.
I was going to ask you.
Combo.
You say, yes, you don't like building things. Has there ever been a game that has like a custom map editor or like a building feature like crafting or something that you've liked? I'm wondering if like a virtual version is something that you've ever enjoyed with that, or if it's just not with your brain, just in general, you're just not into it.
Yeah, I guess it depends how much, because I think we talked about way back in the day, like in Fallout, I never did any of that type of stuff. Like I don't like in Midnight Suns, I never did any of that. Like, oh, customize your room, but I
Like
like
sometimes you make a character for like in the character creator. I feel like that's
that
as
I
far
like.
as you go.
Yeah, that I like, and then like I like maybe building with pre-made assets, which hopefully will play on Extra Life. It's like Middle Earth. I love like, hey, this is your plot of land, and you're gonna build your towers, your wars,
Right.
stuff like that. That's the type of
More
building I would
RTS
like.
style.
Yeah, we're like even like Jurassic World games. I never got too far because a lot of it was like, oh, you got to play the story to unlock this, and I was like, I don't have time for that. But that's the type of building where it's like everything's been made for you, and you can kind of put them wherever you want, put the toys, put the puzzle pieces where you want them. But when it's like just all like even in Witcher, or even I don't know if there was in Starfield, but I don't hate the feature, but I'm not a fan of, oh, there's 5 different ingredients or 5 different things you need to make this certain bow. I'm just gonna make a bunch of money and buy the bow. Like that's where I am. So same thing in life. I even said to him, I'm like, we should just paid someone to do this. She likes doing that stuff. She's much like her dad, but for me, I'm like, this is wasting my time. So that's where I am.
IKEA charges quite a lot to do the at-home install.
Yeah. So that's where we were. Bruised hands. I got like my thumb has like calluses on it because you're not supposed to use like drills on them. So, but
right.
So yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, this is here on SideQuest this week. We have some fun topics. We're going to be talking about some of the games we've been playing. I have a couple quick shoutouts, and then mainly Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, the latest Zelda game. I've been playing a bunch of that. And then we're going to talk about the Switch 2 a little bit because I feel like now that Zelda is out, I feel like we're just very close to maybe an announcement of like the official showing off the console. So we'll talk about that, and then we're going to talk about the PS5 a little bit as well, as we like to do. Just talk about next year because of a certain game, couple game announcements that have come up. So yeah, should be a fun episode. I think where we're going to start first here is I just want to brag a little bit. I've already bragged to you, Travis, but I want to brag here on the show that I finally beat the Elden Ring DLC,
Right,
Shadow
yes.
of the Erd Tree. I had done a couple updates here on SideQuest in the last few weeks as I've been playing through it, but I finally, since I was not here last week, it was like just over a week ago now, but I finally beat all the main bosses. I probably missed a couple small things, but I've seen most of the map and seen most of the areas. And it was quite the experience. When I was getting down to it, and I only had a few things left, I was like, I'm kind of burnt out. Like, I think I just want to rush down the final boss, take him out, and then call it a day. And that final boss is probably the second most difficult boss I've ever fought in a FromSoft game before. Only second, maybe to Millennia from the main game. who also just kicked my ass a bunch of times. But yeah, this boss took me like probably close to 60 attempts. And after about half of those attempts with my regular build, I was really like, okay, I got to switch it up. So I was changing my weapon around. I was trying with or without shield, trying different timings for summoning my mimic, changing out my magic physique thing, like the other bottle you can drink that gives you like a temporary bonuses.
Yeah.
I had never changed that at all in my whole time of Elden Ring. I got like a healing one and like the one that prevents damage, and I don't think I ever changed it, but this boss was finally like, okay, I need to like optimize my build, changing out different armor pieces, switching out individual ones. I'm like, can I get a little bit more holy damage reduction on this one? And it was quite the experience of like, that felt like a custom character kind of thing of customizing every little thing just to beat this one boss. It took forever. It was so freaking difficult, but I finally did it, and that felt good. And then when I finally did, I was like, I don't have many more bosses after this. I don't really want another grueling effort like that, but I feel like I'm so close to seeing all the main bosses cleared out on this DLC that I should go for it. And I just plowed through the rest of them. There was one other boss that was giving me issues. Probably died like 6 or 7 times on him like a couple nights before. And then right after fighting the final boss, went back to him, died really quick once because I was like, I forget his moves. And then second time, beat him because I was just on a high. And then like these other dragons, this whole dragon area that I'd never been to had 2 bosses that I tried them once or twice and they just destroyed me, but I just wrecked them. One of them I killed one try, and then the other one only took me like 2 attempts just to figure out like his moveset a little bit. So I just plowed through the rest of it, and that felt really good, especially because the final cutscene you get when you beat the DLC is like really underwhelming. Like it's not
really?
any like, I'm not really a lore guy for these games, and they make it really hard to follow the story. But it was nothing. So I was like, I want a little bit more to like finish my experience here, and so it actually worked well. This huge cinematic dragon boss fight was kind of my last thing to do in Elden Ring, and that probably is the last time I'll play this game for a very long time. Like I don't see myself replaying it. I don't know, for 20 years. Like I don't really do that with these kind of games. I'm not really interested in like playing them over and over again. So it'll probably be by the time I completely forget everything about it. I don't think any more DLCs coming for it. I think they're kind of done with this game. So yeah, it was fun to finally put it to bed, put it to rest, and uninstall it and move on to the next thing.
That's nice. Yeah, I'm jealous. I hope to join you next year in that. It's when I heard you were talking to me in Discord, just reading that, I was like, man, that sounds like a lot. That sounds like the which is just like that's pressure I don't need right now. But that's just like, that game's a commitment. But that's cool that you've got to the end there, and then you can kind of put in your rear view for a long time, whether you play it again or if they make like a sequel and down the line, which I think they will, because it just was super successful, right? So even if it's something in the franchise or whatnot, like they'll make one where you have to buy. But no, congratulations, because those are, I know it's like I feel like that game, when I dip my toes back into it, and then it's just, I know those bigger bosses are coming up, it's just kind of like war. You survive one more, it's like, I want to get back in there, so yeah, that's awesome.
I know, because I feel like usually the hardest ones they usually put in optional areas, and that one from the base game, Melania, like she is optional. You don't have to do that to beat the game. But this is the final cut scene in the DLC is like, beat this guy. So I feel like this might be their hardest mainline boss that they've ever done. I mean, I haven't played all their games, of course, but at least dabbled in most of them. So it's kind of crazy. Level up. Makes me a little bit worried for where we're gonna go next, which is the next thing. It's like, I don't know how many bosses they've made at this point. Hundreds, right, across the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, that are all like similar things. I feel like they just kind of keep ratcheting up the craziness of these fights, and this one definitely had a couple of those elements to it. So
next game, everyone will just be super easy. Like every single boss, 1-2 hit, they'll reverse psychology it. For everyone that
we'll see,
because
I feel like people would hate that. People have been complaining about this DLC boss, but at the same time, if it's too easy, then I feel like they blast through it and they don't think twice about it. And then it doesn't become an all-time great. So it cannot be an easy thing to balance, especially for Elden Ring, which brought in a lot of new players as well. So I wanted to ask you, because one of our topics, we've had it charted on the calendar for like months, was or at least when the DLC was announced, that Starfield DLC, the first big update came out about a week or two ago, the Shattered Space DLC, and me and you were both going to jump into it, and I had kind of put it off my radar just because, one, I haven't resubscribed to Game Pass yet after my hiatus that I mentioned back in July, and I'm just not really feeling that right now. Now that it's October, I want to play like some scary games and stuff, so I've kind of put it aside, and then you were maybe going to play it, and then you just had a busy few days and haven't had a chance to jump into it. But since it's already kind of cooling a bit because it's been out for a little bit. Are you still planning on going to it right now and playing it in the next month?
Yeah, I'd say next month. Yeah, it just
Okay.
because the amount of time I could have played it would have been like an hour or two. And it's like that. I don't think it's gonna be worth like even any. Like I just figure I'll get into it a little bit, and
I don't think it's too long either. I don't think
10
if you have a
hours.
free weekend, I think you'll be able to blast through it pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's what I'm even hoping with the like already Thanksgiving. I'm not at my house for half of it, but that's what I'm hoping for is to do that. And yeah, it's around 10 hours, and that's why I kind of a couple weeks ago dip my toes back into Starfield. So it's like okay, I can jump in, be ready, and I kind of still have that. But no, I still want to. I'm still kind of bit off that Alien Romulus hype, and because it's short enough, because I really want to do that, and then I accidentally let I was just busy moving, but my Ubisoft subscription go one more month, so I gotta beat Outlaws. I've never.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that too. Have you
Yeah.
played more since
Nope.
the review that we did?
I've been really bad. I bet like even when was I think last weekend, me and Emily finally played a couple rounds of Call of Duty, and that's been I looked at the calendar. I hadn't played Call of Duty in a full month, which is like a long time for me. I've literally played nothing just because it's been just most of my nights are it's either watching stuff for the podcast and then with you guys, or it's unpacking, doing that type of stuff, or just other
It's
stuff.
been a lot of
right? But-
shows and retros lately. So that's
that's the
fair.
other thing, right? It's just because like even tonight before with you, I was like, okay, I have to watch Penguin, and then I come do this, and then I'm gonna go chalk with the boys after and everything like that. So no, I still plan on because when I went back into Starfield, I just had a good time with it. So it's like, okay, I'm ready for like a small little maybe scarier story. So I want to. So my bucket list right now, I originally had Alan Wake, but I want to finish Outlaws so I don't have to pay for another month of UB Plus. It's fine. It's only like $15-$20, but I didn't play it a single time after we did a review, but I still was enjoying it and want to complete even the main campaign and kind of go from there. I'm not jumping into Skull and Bones or anything like that, so I just want to do that. So that's kind of the 1-2 punch. Will probably be Outlaws first and then Games Pass because I just have that for just usually ever. So that'll be Starfield. So yeah, that is the game plan once it starts to settle down. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to jump into it at this point. I don't know if I'm going to wait for like more DLC to come out down the road, or I don't know. I'll probably just be having that itch for some open world thing at some point, and that'll be the thing I jump to. Right now it's been like I've actually been playing a little bit Mad Max again over the weekend. I want to beat that game, and I'm like I'm in no rush whatsoever, but just every time I have a late night, just throw it on for an hour or two and bust a few more camps and get a few more upgrades. And
no, I'm so glad you ended up liking it as much as you did. Because it's a fun little gen game that I wish we got. I guess I don't need to be what is it, greedy, but still I could have took another road expedition in Mad Max 2, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, no, it's funny. The area I just got to, I forget the name of it, but it's like one of those places that if I have to go through a big story moment to like bust through the next open world area, and this one feels a lot more like Fallout-esque. Like there's a lot more of because there's always big freighter boats and scrap and random establishments everywhere, but this has very much like houses and buildings that have been kind of ripped apart by whatever happened. The bombs dropped. I don't even know what happened in the Mad Max world, but I don't know. It's
just
cool.
decay
Like I
over
feel like they're
time.
doing a good job of here's a big empty desert, but like it feels different in these different areas, whether it's like a little bit of visual change or just like the kind of things you're finding there. So that's been a good time.
Nice.
And the other game I wanted to shout out or provide an update on is UFO 50, which I talked about a couple weeks ago, which of course is that compilation of 50 games in one. I think I've sold a couple people on it.
I saw on the Discord,
have been talking about, picking it up. So
you getting
that's
some
pretty
cuts
exciting.
or something like that we don't know about at Geekverse?
I wish I was anywhere attached to this project. That would make me happy. But I think I was thinking like, how do I want to talk about this game? Do I just bring it up and then talk about the games within the collection that I've been playing? And my weird little idea is like, what if I do like a game of the week sort of thing, and I just talk about it for as long as I'm playing this game, bring up one game per week that's interesting, or share an anecdote about it. So
Almost
I'm gonna
a year's worth
of
of content right there.
Exactly. That's almost a full year. So at least for this week, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick one game and talk about it. And that's because it is the perfect setting. So, whenever October rolls around the last couple of years, I just go deep into horror games because that was definitely a genre I never played when I was younger. And so I'm trying to make up for lost time and play some scary games. So like, I've been playing a ton of Resident Evils. Alan Wake came out last October. So that was a good one as well. And I have started up another game that I will share on probably next week or the week after on Sidequest.
Saw the video game based on the motion picture?
I should put that on my list. I'd love to boot that up.
I don't even know where you could get that. I don't even know if
I doubt it's backwards compatible, but maybe it is on.
Yeah, I doubt that. Yeah, I think I own one of them. I don't know what they made 2 of them. So
it was a 360 era, right?
Yeah, 360.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe it's still out there, but anyway, of course, I want to get my scary games going on, and so thankfully, UFO 50 has a horror game in there, a scary game in there, which is really cool. So it's called Manor, and it's very much like a old school point and click adventure type game where you just have like you're looking at a room, you don't have like a character, and you're just clicking around on different things, interacting with them, inspecting, moving around different rooms, and as the title would suggest, you're moving around a manor, as a big old mansion. And so it starts out with like pretty basic things where it's like you'll find a screwdriver, you got to use the screwdriver on this vent to break the vent open, and then in there's like a bobby pin that you can use on the door handle to unlock the door and then get to the next room. And it's very much like little puzzles like that, but then as you get further and deeper into it, you're finding something in one room, and then you have to use it as like a code for a computer on the other side of the house, and that gives you something to get through this like hedge maze. Like I don't know, it's all these little clues, puzzles hidden throughout. I think the fun thing on top of it, what adds a little tension and scariness to it, is you're going through a creepy house. There's creepy, weird, gross things that you're seeing, but there's also just a lunatic in this house like chasing you around. So every once in a while you're like, I have to go to the kitchen because I think there's something in this cupboard I need to go get. And then he'll be in there, and then you have to like run around, and then your cursor's like all janked out. It's like moving around wildly. You got to try and run away from him or like go and hide somewhere. And so that adds like a fun little tension to it. But it was a really good time. It probably took me like 3 hours to beat it, and that was with a couple different endings as well. So
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, a couple different ways it ends, and then I think there's even bonus ones if you play like perfectly. So there's even more to go back and do if I really want to.
Is there like a bad ending? You know, spoil it completely, but is there like things don't go your way ending?
I'll say that both the endings I got, I would say, are bad endings.
Okay.
So I think to get the good ending, you have to like beat the game without dying would be my guess, or beat it in a shorter amount of time. It doesn't say, because each game in this collection, like there's the cartridges all start like with like cobwebs on them, like they've just been, you're unearthing them for the first time, and then when you pick it, you like dust it off and it's cleaned, and then when you beat any game, you get a gold cartridge for it, and then if you do everything or like a bonus kind of thing, you get a cherry on it, so it's like a red cartridge. So that's kind of just a way to
cherry on top, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of a way to see your progression. And so I got the cherry on Manor from those two endings, but I think some games have even more to unearth, and I'm pretty sure, I feel like there's got to be another ending for this that is a more positive thing. But yeah, I'm guessing it requires like some mastery. So maybe next year, next Halloween, when I'm fiending some more scary games and I'm a little distance from it, I'll come back and do that. But that's cool. It's just like, here's a random like 3 hour long, really cool horror like unique experience in this package of 49 other games. Just insane. So I can't recommend that game enough. And yeah, definitely dust that one off this month, because it is a good, scary, fun experience. And I haven't really played a lot of like point and click adventure games like that in a long time. Like that was something I played a lot as a kid. So it's almost nostalgic to go back to a game like that. So yeah, it was a really cool, really good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciating them have bad endings and whatnot, just because you shouldn't always get out scotch-free, so.
Exactly. Or you got to work really hard if you do want to get that. Okay, moving on then. Let's talk about Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. This is the latest mainline Zelda game that is coming out here. This is from the team that did the Link's Awakening remake. Obviously, you can tell that just visually they're using the same engine and a lot of the same assets and stuff, but it is that same team as well, which is pretty cool to go from, hey, make this remake of a game and then make your own unique experience. And I thought that it was interesting looking into it, or there were some interviews that came out, and one of them was that like after Link's Awakening, this team was working on like a Zelda dungeon maker game, like a Mario Maker, but for a Zelda dungeon thing. Which was in Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening had like a dungeon making mode, and it wasn't great. Like it was in there. It was a bonus thing you could do. You were unlocking things throughout the campaign of it, but like it was just fine, and it didn't have like an online component, so you couldn't make dungeons for people, and it was very limited. It was pretty much just like picking rooms and putting them down rather than like okay, individual rooms, placing objects, placing enemies, that kind of thing. So I played through it all. I did like everything in Link's Awakening for that, but it wasn't great. But it was cool to hear that this game started out as that idea, but furthered and trying to make that into a full game. And then I guess just at some point they realized like this isn't quite working, but like let's spin what we have made into an actual game. And I think that's where a lot of the Echoes system comes from. If people haven't or forget the trailers, the idea in this game is that you're going around as you're defeating enemies or finding objects. You can create an echo of them, so you're taking the memory of it, and then at any point you can like summon those things. So you can grab the echo of a bed, and then you can just spawn beds wherever you want. Or when you defeat a bokoblin, you can take its memory, and then next time you're in a combat sequence, you can summon that bokoblin or a little army if you want, and they'll go and fight and do all this battle for you. So that's kind of the core idea of it, and I can definitely see where that came from a dungeon making game in the first place. So I think it's cool to see that DNA of it. But yeah, I was definitely I wasn't sure if I was going to pick up this game. I really liked Link's Awakening, so I like the vibe of this. I like that you were playing as Zelda. I think that's cool. I also saw that this game was directed by a woman at the studio, and this is the first Zelda game ever directed by a woman, so I thought that was a really interesting thing. But then when it was getting closer to it coming out, I was like, I don't know, like it looks like it might be too easy, or like, is this a full-fledged game, or is this kind of more of like a shorter mini thing? And it's still like $90, so it's like I was on the edge a little bit if I was going to pick it up. But then after listening to a couple reviews, all of those things I was worried about were pretty much just thrown in the dirt. Like, this game is none of that. This game is a full mainline Zelda game. This game is a sequel to Tears of the Kingdom in that sense, right? It's the next mainline Zelda game, and it legitimately feels like that too. Like, there is a lot of inspiration taken from Tears and Breath of the Wild in particular that I found really surprising about this. And like, I don't know, I'm maybe 15 hours in and I still have more to do. So, it's shorter than a Breath of the Wild, but it's still like a pretty meaty game, and it's freaking awesome. I'm really loving it so far, and I'm really, really glad I picked it up. I really like everything about it, and it's like it's just surprising me about like how fully fledged it is and how fun and interesting the main concept of it is. So yeah, it's been a great time, and you mentioned today when I was talking about this that you were maybe thinking of picking this game up too. I'm curious where that came from.
I like the art style a lot, and that's what I was going to ask you too next as far as stuff. But it was when we were in the States a couple of weeks ago, that Costco, they had a huge, like, whenever it first released, they had a huge God, what is it? At the
Like a
used to work at
display or
Target. It's a display, but what an end cap. That's what it kind of was.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, this is out, and just seeing it. And because I haven't with Tears, I haven't done that because Breath of the Wild, I didn't love it. And it's one of those things. Tears also came out another time again with with other games. I still have on list. I'm still gonna play it, but I wasn't like, I want a Zelda game, but I wasn't like dying like everyone else was to get into that. So even though I didn't even think this would be like the next mainline type of Zelda, I kind of thought it would just be its off, like not a spin-off per se, but the smaller adventure that they do many times with all these franchises, right? So it's interesting you say that. Why I was thinking about it, because the girls took interest in it, but that's what I was going to ask you. What is like I know it's probably solo player, what is like the difficulty of this? Because that's where it's like, okay, if they were to see like a Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, I go, no, like that's a few years away, where this one did look, I don't know if it's just because of the art style, it looked like it was a bit more younger pace, and that's what I thought when we first got those initial previews. But I feel like the things you've said, and maybe other people said, that maybe it's not. It is a bit more of mature, but not in the sense of like a M rating, just in the sense of you got to have a bit more of a player skill to have it.
Yeah, I think it's, for the most part, it's kind of weird, right? Like in the combat sense, because you're not really needing as much crazy reaction time and stuff, right? Because you're summoning enemies to fight for you for the most part, and there is a way that you can whip out a sword and attack people. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I think for the most part it would be pretty doable for a younger player. I feel like generally Nintendo games are pretty good about that, and I think this would as well. There was one boss fight though that actually destroyed me. Like, I probably died like 6 or 7 times on it,
no.
Which I can't think of the last time that happened for me in like a 2D Zelda game. Like, definitely in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, so enemies are like just so overpowered that you'll just get wrecked by them because your like stats aren't good enough yet. Not even like a skill thing. Like they just literally one shot you, even if you have like 15 hearts or something sometimes, because that game's crazy in the way things are balanced. But yeah, like I had one fight in this game that was absolutely destroying me, and then I've died like other times too. And some of the puzzles are tricky. So I don't know. I do feel like it actually could be maybe a bit difficult if you're new to a game like this. Like I would maybe recommend.
The vibe I was kind of getting, yeah.
Yeah, like I'd maybe recommend just like pick up Link's Awakening instead if you're looking for like a similar cutesy sort of thing. But that might be a little bit more straightforward. Although some of the dungeons in that game too also are quite challenging in terms of the puzzle aspect of it. So I don't know what the perfect answer. I mean, there is an easier mode too, I believe, that's in there. So I guess you could always turn that on, and that would make things a little bit easier. Okay. Maybe not the puzzles so much. Yeah. But I think what's so interesting about it is this game does have a more standard Zelda structure than a Tears Breath of the Wild. There is an openness to it, in that you can like go to some dungeons in different orders. But like there is, there are dungeons in this as opposed to some of the things that those games did. And like there are puzzles in them, but the puzzles are so open-ended because of the system. It's never just like any other Zelda game. It's like, okay, in this dungeon, you're going to unlock the bow and arrow, and then you have to use the bow and arrow to like beat the dungeon's main puzzle. In this, you have a couple dungeons that have similar mechanics to that, but for the most part, it's just like you have such a large repertoire of items that you can just spawn at any given time that it makes the puzzles very freeform, and you can kind of do them in your own style or like the ways you want, even if there's like specific things you have to do. So it works out pretty well, and I really like that openness to the puzzle design. I think it's really fun, and that also does feel very Breath of the Wild in a way. Like a lot of the shrines in that game do have multiple solutions to them if you're pretty creative with how you're going to use like the tools that you're given. So yeah, the other things in this game is that like that main thing is the summoning, taking echoes and summoning things.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
And then the other main ability you have is, I don't even know what they called it. It's kind of like a tether thing. You shoot out a little beam, and then you get locked to an item, and then when you move around, the item will like follow your exact movements, so you can kind of like move things at a distance. Like maybe something's behind a wall, so you could lock onto it and then move it onto a pressure plate, for example, to like solve a puzzle. But then the other thing you can do with it is you can lock yourself to what that item is doing. So you could like at one point you have to like swim up this thing of water, and there's like a stream pushing you down, so you can't swim hard enough. But if you put a box like over on the other side of the water and that's floating up, you can just attach yourself to that box, and you'll slowly like float up through those bubbles and then get past it. You'll have to do that with like conveyor belts and moving platforms, things like that too. So that's one that I found interesting because I kind of forget about it sometimes, or at least I was early on. But as I've gotten deeper in the game and like tried more crazy combos out, you can do some seriously wild stuff, especially in combat, of like locking enemies down to specific positions, or just grabbing an enemy, walking near a cliff, and just like dropping them off the cliff. Like you can do a lot of that too. You can have a lot of fun with it and get pretty creative. So I like that kind of works for the puzzles, but also for the combat outside of that as well.
And that definitely sounds like in the vein. I remember that was the biggest thing one of the biggest things with Tears and Breath, that people were surprised how much you could do, and all those creations people would. I'm sure it's not as fast as that, but still, that was an aspect of the game. I feel like they didn't. They definitely advertised that more in Tears, because in Breath everyone figured out like, oh, you can do and create all this really cool stuff. But I think in Tears they lean like, oh, you have this ability. But I think it was like an underrated thing when they first came out. But that's cool because it's like kind of carrying that on. So.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about that a bit more, of how this game really does feel like it is taking the lessons of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and using them here, even if this is a very different game, smaller scale, top-down Zelda. But I think the first thing that stood out to me is just the openness of it. Like, even though I mentioned like the dungeons, there's a couple of them you can do out of order, but like you can still pretty much traverse the entire map from the get-go, which is pretty rare for these games. Normally you need like the jump ability, or you need the power glove to pick up a rock and move it, and then that unlocks more of the map for you. But like right off the bat, just once you can only spawn like a couple items at a time, you can still like make boxes and beds in such a way that you can just climb on top of the trees that are normally the barriers between areas in these kind of Zelda games, and just get on top of the trees and just get above these mountains and just go anywhere you want. And like immediately you can do that within the first 10 minutes after like the tutorial area. I was just like off on top of these huge trees in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing up there, but it's just like the interstitial area between areas, and that's just totally at your disposal, which obviously feels very Tears of the Kingdom, where there's nothing in your way that you can't overcome. But to have that kind of freedom in a top-down 2D Zelda game is really, really fun and different. And yeah, I've never seen anything like it. So even if your moveset is very simple at the start of the game, just like the ability to spawn anything you want makes it so open in that way, and it's really, really cool. Yeah, the dungeons, doing things out of order, I think is fun. Like a couple different moments you can kind of choose where you want to go, and that will change things too. Because like if I go to the desert dungeon, I'm gonna get different echoes there that I can now use in the dungeon. The second one I go to, but for someone who did like the water dungeon first, they're gonna get like different enemies that they're bringing to the desert dungeon, and so I think that'll change how people experience the game, like solve puzzles and do combat encounters. There is kind of a like mini version of the cooking system from the Tears and Breath, where instead of like throwing a bunch of ingredients in a pot, cooking it up and getting that, you're instead like going to these different DQ vendors and giving them ingredients and making smoothies, and then you just like build up an inventory full of smoothies. But they have that same sort of thing where it's like, this one will give you resistance to heat or resistance to cold. And so it's weird that that was an interesting mechanic they took too, where when you go up to this one snowy mountain, you like take ice damage pretty much if you're standing out there for too long, which feels very much like Tears as well. And then I think maybe one of the most surprising things for me in terms of the comparison is that you can like get horses in this game and move around and ride around with horses. Because I was like, man, this map feels like comparatively so much smaller. Like you don't really need that.
Yeah.
And yet you honestly don't. Now that I have them, you don't really need it. But it is still just such a fun thing to throw in there. And then of course there's like, once you get a horse at the ranch, you can do races, and that's like a fun mini game you can do. Eventually you can get your own horse. And I love that the way you summon it, you know how like any game has like a whistle, Elden Ring or Ghost of Tsushima, you always just have that whistle. In this, what you do is you summon a carrot that you've copied, the echo of a carrot, and then as soon as you summon the carrot, your horse will fly out of nowhere and come and eat the carrot, and then you can ride the horse wherever you want. So something I wish I unlocked a bit sooner so I could have used it more, because now I'm like just in deeper dungeon areas where the horse is not really going to help me so much. But just like they did not need to add that at all, but they did, and I feel like there's a few things like that where they just kind of went above and beyond in ways that I'm very surprised by. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I end up reviewing pretty well, right? It's like in the 80, it's like 85 or something like that. I feel like it's a bit more surprised because I feel like, not that I was looking at this being like, oh, it's going to be a crap Zelda game. I don't think anyone thought that, but just from your and other people's word, I thought it was not going to maybe be as high praised. Like I said, maybe a smaller chapter, and it still technically is, right? Compared to Tears and Breath, but still sometimes some of those can be not. Well, no, some can be skippable. Where it's okay. Another Zelda game to push out some money, capitalize on it being really back right now. But it's cool to hear that. Just there's fun stuff in it, but it's also a good game so far. So.
Yeah, it's sitting at 86 on Metacritic, which is pretty. It's not in the 90s like Breath and Tears were, but it's still, super solid.
I thought it was almost gonna be more of like a 70. That's what I was kind of thinking.
No, I mean I think especially like that earlier this year is when Princess Peach Showtime came out, and I feel like many other people were thinking, okay, is this kind of be like Zelda's version of what they did there, where it's like, okay, Zelda finally gets to play as a game, but it's like a weird little spin-off game, and it's like maybe not super polished.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
But yeah, this does not feel, and Kirkland really enjoyed that game. We've talked about it on Sidequest. You can go back and listen to those episodes. But I think even then, like just visually, like the frame rate in that game is really bad, whereas this game like runs really well and plays really well. So I don't know. I feel like they took more care with making this not just like, okay, here's Zelda's opportunity to play, but like let's just make a really great 2D Zelda game in the year 2024. And what does that look like? And yes, Zelda's playable. That's just like a side part of it. It's kind of irrelevant. They were just going to make this really cool game with a really interesting system either way. And yeah, I feel like with where we are in Zelda's history, like there isn't really a formula anymore, right? Like there's been so many non-top-down 2D games, so many different 3D games, whether they're the more linear style. I mean, there's always been openness, even in like Ocarina of Time, but like versus like the full-on open world ones, like there isn't really a template for what Zelda is anymore. And so I think it's cool that they could go back to a 2D Zelda game that isn't just a remake and come up with something totally fresh and new and feels like a full-on sequel is cool.
I feel like it's not in the exact same situation because they're very different, but I feel like with Zelda, Link, whatever you want to say, and then Smash, like I feel like there's a couple, like Mario, we always know they're going to go through cycles of here's another type of platformer, here's another type of Mario Odyssey, Mario 3D, here's
Hmm.
another weird one like Luigi Mansion. But with Zelda and Smash, like with Zelda, I'm just very curious, what do you do next after these two big ones, right? Like, do you just do,
Yeah.
and I feel like they said they weren't going to try and do exactly like another tiers or whatever. Any Smash we've talked about that many times and whatnot. So I'm interested to see where it goes next, the franchise. So, but
Hmm.
even
Yeah.
here, it seems like it went on a good pivot. So,
We'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. We'll talk about it more in a little bit because I do want to talk about that. But first, let's take a quick ad break. Okay, we are back. So a little bit more about Echoes, and then yeah, we can talk about like maybe the future a little bit. I think so. The biggest thing that I think also what I love about this game just immediately or within the first like hour is just the amount of echoes that you're getting in this
mm-hmm.
game is crazy. I just feel like the first half an hour, every minute I was getting like one or two new things that I could copy for the rest of the game and use it whenever I wanted, you know? And then like that never really stopped for like the first few hours. You're just continually like once you get into the overworld, you know, any direction you go, there's gonna be like all sorts of different enemies that you're gonna be bumping into. So you're finding tons of stuff like right off the bat. And even into where I'm at now, there are just so many things still that I'm finding constantly in these different areas. Like when I got to the snow area, there's so many fun different things like clouds or like giant snowballs that I could make, and then obviously all sorts of new enemy types. Oh, still getting over my cold here. My throat is just getting blasted here. But yeah, it's kind of never ending the stuff you're getting, and I think that is of course like the biggest pro of this game. But then the con of it is like the organization and like the UI element of how that all works out is not good at all. It's pretty much just
Oh,
one
really?
long
Hmm.
horizontal list, and you just like individually scroll
Oh,
through items. But it gets at a point now where I'm like, I have like 100
there's a
things
lot
that
of
I can
items. Yeah.
summon, and so you just have to scroll through the list. And there's different ways you can sort it, but it never really feels ideal. And I just feel like what they should have done is like there's a lot of things that are very I don't know they're like for example you can summon three different beds in this game. You get like a basic one, you get like a Garuda bed, and then you get like your own like Zelda's bed from the castle at some point. And really the only difference between them is like how much they cost and like how much they
Yeah.
heal you for when you sleep in them. But it's like that should have been, you know, like as you're scrolling horizontally, like maybe like a little vertical menu within that for like here's all the beds or like here's all the fire enemies
Yeah.
positioned together. Here's all like the basic objects positioned together, and I just feel like it makes it like such a huge mess to organize through all these things and find what you want.
And when they're in the list, is it based on when you found them, or is it like alphabetical? Like, what is it? Like,
You can sort it different ways. So
okay,
the default one is just the last used. So like
okay,
you know, that's usually where I always have a bed and like within my last like 10, 15 things used, like the water block. My favorite enemy types are usually like in that most recent list. But as you're using all sorts of different crazy things, that obviously pushes things down and then it, you know, cycles in whatever is most recently picked. You can change it by like, it'll sort by type. So what I was saying there, of like all the fire enemies, like it does bundle them together when you do it that way. But I feel like what they should have done is like had like horizontal and then vertical to have like two ways to organize them. So yeah, you can also have it by like last unlocked or cost as well, which I guess could be useful because each of these things has like different. I don't know. You have like different amounts of things you can summon at any given time, right? And so it sorts it by that. So there are different ways to do it. But yeah, it's just a little messy on the organization of it, and that's something. If I don't know if they would use this idea again in a future game, but if they do, that's like I think my biggest thing is I'd hope they'd fix up the organization for it. Like even if like Tears of the Kingdom, like a sequel did something like that, where you could like rather than just finding random objects in the world and connecting them together, you could summon more things, like what you can do in that game. But if that was like more of a feature of it, I feel like they would need to figure out like an organization system for all that stuff. But maybe that's a bit. It might be a bit nitpicky, but that's really like the biggest con this game has is just like eventually you have so many enemy types that you'll just there's some that I've just never used or I just forget about, or it's like I would like to try out that little snake because he's cute and funny, but it's like I don't even know where he is on this list, and he's not going to be that effective, and it's like it's not really worth it to go
Can you
find
discard
him.
ones you don't use much? Like, is there like a delete or?
You
let
cannot
go of?
you cannot delete, but I
Okay.
feel like that would have been the solution is like maybe adding like a list of favorites,
Yeah.
or like making little presets. Like maybe you could pick like here's a little squad of enemies that costs my overall amount that I can, and there's like a 3 cost, a 2 cost, a 1 cost or something. And you could like save that preset. That way you could like quickly summon the things you want to. It would have been cool, but they don't really have something like that. Um, I think so. Maybe talking a little bit more about the combat. So that the main way of combat is summoning enemies or copying enemies and then summoning them. And so you can obviously based on like certain enemies are going to be counters to others just based on whether they have range attacks or if they're flying. Maybe they can't be caught by other enemies, that kind of thing. But then you also on top of that do have what they called sword fighter mode, which is pretty much just link mode, where like for a limited amount of time you can just switch and do sword fighter mode, and then you have a sword, you have your shield, you have a bow and arrow, you have bombs. So you pretty much just have like Link's moveset for a little bit, and you can level that up so it actually lasts for quite some time. Normally it is like it's counting down as you use it, kind of like an energy meter, but you can get it to a point where it lasts for quite a while. And like certain, like as you're fighting enemies, you're like getting more of the energy back. So some fights I've done where I'm just like staying in that mode forever. So I'm pretty much just playing as Link for a little bit. So I think that was really good for the just variety sake of it. If you want to like get in there, get your hands dirty a little bit, fighting for a little bit, but also on certain bosses, it's good when they're in their stunned mode to switch into that and just slash the hell out of them real quick, rather than your rinky-dink little enemies who have really slow attacks or maybe aren't being as efficient as they could be. So that's really good. I really like that system. I think the upgrades for it are pretty basic, but overall it's pretty good. And then I think really just maybe the last thing I'll say, because I don't want to spoil too much, I think so much of the fun about this game is like discovering interactions between items, or like people having their like favorite enemy types, or like favorite solutions to problems, that kind of thing. But I think maybe my last thing is just like all the dungeons I've done, whether it's like little mini dungeons or the mainline like named dungeons, have all been really fun. Really good puzzles, good little combat sequences with mini bosses, unique mechanics, or even just like fun visuals and fun to traverse. And even if they're easy, just like the mastery of your tool set and using your favorite items is like really satisfying. So
because I know
yeah,
you and dungeons have been an issue in the past here on
Sidequest. I mean,
yeah.
I think that was a big step down for me with Tears and Breath of the Wild. Like those games are just so vast that they have so much shitty stuff in them alongside that stuff that's really great. But I feel like this game is just like, okay, what are just the best dungeon ideas we had, or the most fun things, and that stuff makes it into the game. And like the worst things they just take out of the game, rather than like spamming an extra 100 shrines on the map, because an open world game needs that kind of thing, because not every player is going to find every single one of them. So I understand why they did it, but I just, so much of that stuff really grated on me, especially when I was playing Tears and just felt like I was doing a retread of so much stuff. It really grinded my gears. But not having that issue this time around, and going out of my way to do dungeons even when I have some mainline quests to go do. Oh, and also the side quests have been really good. There's been some really fun ones, like
Nice.
Not just basic fetch quests, but like someone's looking for a certain thing and you have to go find it and bring it to them, or find it, get an echo of it, copy it and bring it to them. Or as I mentioned, like the horse races, those were really fun to do. And yeah, just I feel like getting pretty creative with some of the side quests. So I always like that kind of thing as well.
Nice.
So maybe I'll leave it there for Echoes of Wisdom, unless you have any other questions about it.
No, I think you answered them. But it sounds really fun. So I think I'm like you, where I got to log on my account. Is that where you found out you had a voucher? Like, does it still show one? I think I still have one, because I remember not recently, but I think when I bought the God, what was the last Mario game? Not
Wonder?
3D World. Wonder, thank you. I think I did that there. So I think I have one more. So it's tough. I go back and forth. I've also just thought I'm just probably going to use on Smash, because I want to. It's still pretty vast, but I want to try and start getting the girls into that. And I think they get a kick out of all the characters. Even just seeing me, because even times when I play my wrestling game, they'll just watch and they know they can't play that yet. But I think there's like, I remember Smash, at least back then, 64 era, when you would set it to like easy, they were pretty dumb. Those the CPU. So
they don't even attack.
Yeah, it's like if I set it there. So and they love Mario and all that world. So I think that's where, if it's not Zelda, because I've always said I'm going to get Ultimate at some point. I've played it enough at people's house, but it's one I just have to own for myself for the rest of the time. And it's been a good time, I think, just because maybe I'll get that itch scratched when we do the stream. But I actually haven't played Smash maybe since the stream. Where there was a number of years where we were playing that. Obviously, you played a lot, but even myself, who didn't own it, we're playing it monthly because it always pop up in the Gauntlet or around and whatnot. So it's like I felt like I had like played Ultimate but not owned it, but I felt like I had owned it the amount I had played it. So, but I think it's that time soon because I don't know when a Smash is coming up anytime soon. So.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to take a while, but
Yeah.
I don't even know where to go view your vouchers, but when I said I was on the fence about this game and I just went to the store page and I was like, I think I'm just going to pick it up. This game looks great. And I realized I had a voucher, so I was like, this is like a free game. I already paid for this
So
months
just go to
ago,
the store
so
too, and maybe it'll just show me there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know whenever you go to if you click on a game, proceed to checkout, it'll show you at that point.
Okay.
It'll ask you if you have one already, but I'm sure if you go on your account thing in the bottom left, you can view it there. But of course,
Yeah.
Nintendo is pretty janky about that stuff. But yeah, to your question earlier, like where does Zelda go next? Because I feel like that's something with Mario where everyone was expecting Odyssey 2 or like another another 3D open worldy kind of one, and then they come out here with Wonder and they're like, you know what, we're not done with 2D Mario yet, even though we have Mario Maker. I think that was quite a surprise, and I kind of feel like that is kind of the same case here, where they just had these two huge open world games. In between, they had like Link's Awakening. Yeah, that remake did come out in between the two games. So like they still have other things. They've had other spin-off games. But like in terms of mainline stuff, they've already kind of done that here. It feels so soon because Tears just came out last year, but they already came out with a new 2D game for the first time in quite a few years, since probably like a 3DS game. And yeah, like where do you think it goes next? Because I kind of feel like they won't go on the scale of Breath or Tears for the next game. So but I think they would still go with like a 3D game, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying they'd make a sequel to it, even though I don't think it's the worst idea, but I feel like something like a Wind Waker in that vein again. Not exactly, but I feel like Wind Waker came at a time where they needed something a little refreshing. And I don't think Zelda needs that. Like it's not like, oh, those games, like no, people love those games, right? So if they made a third one, even if it wasn't that scale, I think people would love it. Maybe if it was, hey, we're using lots of Tears dynamics, but we are even focusing more on the dungeons this time, right? It's a smaller scale, more streamlined, but we're going to do that, or the shrines, whatever they want to call them, right? But I'd say, and I can't remember because I haven't played Wind Waker in a long time, and even then, it doesn't really matter because you could revisit anything. But the thing is, I feel like the Mario franchise revisits old franchises decades after. Like, look at Luigi's Mansion 3. It took a while to do that, right? Where Zelda, I don't know. I feel like they are always on to the next thing. So that's why I'm saying maybe not like a Wind Waker 2 or a follow-up to that, but something in the vein of that. I don't even know if it's the animation style, but something a little bit different. Something that gives a game its own kind of identity, like the boat and sailing did in Wind Waker, where it's like it has lots of things, but that's everyone remembers that, right? So I feel something, and it's not a big scale game, but it's not like a small scale, but it's smaller compared to Tears and Breath, right? So that's what I'm thinking is something that's streamlined and something that is a specific. Oh, I really even it is the dungeons. If they're like, we're gonna make some really top notch, like it's like we would talk about in Elden Ring back to the beginning, where sometimes you get into an area and they'd have so many levels and layers to them. Something like that. Again, nothing as vast. The boss difficulty not so much, but something in that vein where there's a very specific game function, game setting, even if it is art style, but I think more on the playability side, and that's what gets people in there. And like I said, a new fresh coat of paint like a Wind Waker, where I think Wind Waker is one of my favorite looks just because it stands out. It looks so good in the GameCube era, and I would love if they did something like that art style right now, because they actually run in 1080 now and everything. So it'd be really cool to see made from the base up. So that would be my kind of prediction, is maybe something with a different, more cartoony art style, and then something that is very driven on a specific idea, which I know Sacred, like Tears was, but like you said, big game that covers multiple aspects, right?
Yeah, I think that actually does make a lot of sense because obviously there's a lot of water in both Breath and Tears, lakes and rivers and things like that. But I actually think that is maybe a place they haven't explored as much as they could when it comes to like these open world sort of things. So I feel like, yeah, even just Wind Waker that has more technological advancements, like gives them a lot of room to do some crazy stuff. And so I think that makes a lot of sense actually, especially because Tears was like, okay, we're taking Breath, but we're going into the sky and we're going into the caves below. But that kind of leaves like the oceans around and potentially more lake opportunities, like other things to do there with water. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I would really like to see a new art style explored,
Hmm.
like as you mentioned, bringing back the Toon Link style. I think would be cool. But I also would just be down for them to just reinvent it again, which they are kind of always doing. Like even the Link's Awakening remake style, that was kind of new and fresh at the time. They brought it back here for Echoes. So
Hmm.
Breath and Tears had a similar art style. But yeah, I think it'd be cool to see what they do next, because obviously the kind of like Ghibli like Breath and Tears is
Yes.
great, but I think that they would want to keep it fresh for like this new era of Zelda. And I don't know, maybe they just do a sequel to Tears. You know, they could, if they want to keep building
Yeah.
on these systems.
And you know
I
it's
guess
gonna
I would
sell
just
too.
yeah, I would just hope that we don't use the same map again. And I know they changed a
Yeah.
lot of it, but I think that's my biggest thing. So go somewhere outside of Hyrule, I guess, and create a new area. But they really like to repeat things they've done before. Like even Echoes of Wisdom is a lot of the same locations that you know and love. You know, the Gorons are up there in the volcano mountains, the Gerudo
Hmm.
are over there in the desert. You know, like the Zora over there in the water. So it's a lot of like the same things that you've seen before. And so I don't know. I just want them to maybe push past that and see what is possible. But I like your suggestion there. I think that's a good spot. I mean, that rumor has been circling for so long of like a Wind Waker HD port, because obviously that did come
Yeah.
to the Wii U, and so it feels like, well,
I
it's one of
remember Emily
for
bought it
you,
because she's a big Wind Waker fan. So.
yeah. So it's kind of weird that they never brought that Wii U port over to the Switch, but obviously they're probably just
Hmm.
waiting for a rainy day, and like they haven't really had a rainy day for Zelda in a while because they've just had so many games coming out. Because I mean, this studio and the Tears studio are different, right? So they can kind of make two things at the same time, mixed in the spin-off things there with like the Age of Calamity games, right? And those two games as well. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that makes sense. I like that. And then the other thing I was going to ask you about is like Switch 2. They've said, like, they keep
Hmm.
saying behind every direct that comes out that like, okay, this direct we are not going to talk about the Switch 2. Like they keep setting it up. But I feel like a big thing for them is like they like to wait for a big game to come out. They don't want to like stomp on its toes, and then they'll do a direct where they'll announce like the next slew of things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like now that Zelda's out, I don't think there are some other games that are coming out, but nothing huge. I kind of
Hmm.
feel like it's finally time for them to announce this Switch 2. Like, do you think we're aiming for that same February March release date that the original Switch had? Do you think that's what we're gearing up for, or should we be kind of more expecting like fall of next year?
I feel like I think that, but I also feel like that's what some of the rumors have based upon, that it was more in the springtime. And if it is the springtime, I guess, because at the same time they like for a big release to go, but they usually have like what there was Zelda with the Switch and Wii U at
Mm-hmm.
the same time. I feel like Wii U had some stuff that it launched with, and that's where it's just like I don't know what's in the pipeline. That's like what's the thing they would be launching with, because we've talked about this before with like Xbox, PlayStation. We always think about, oh, what's that first lineup, but then when we've gone back and look, it's like, oh, it's actually not that much. It's the third party games that really like give
Mm-hmm.
you the kid and caboodle. So, but Nintendo usually has like one. They usually have like one big one, and then something like Wonderful 100. Got to shout that out because I haven't shouted that out in decades, maybe. But I'm not sure if that's where you get your, like you're talking about, your Mario Odyssey esque type of game, right? So that's where it depends, and I don't know when though, because I don't think they revealed at Game Awards unless Keely like really does some big
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But I think they want to control that announcement on a direct. I don't know, like maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
something I could see an announcement and then something at Game Awards. Like I said, if he can get Game Awards, that's a big get. But for me, I don't know. It just feels, because they announced the Switch in, it was a December, right? It was like a Japan show. I remember us
Ooh, I
covering.
actually don't remember.
I
That's a good
thought
point.
I thought it was in November or whatnot. I can look because I know we have a YouTube video out there of us covering it, and we were all, as we've always said before, we were all very iffy on
Yeah.
what the Switch was going to be. But I think I have it somewhere. But let's see. So 7 years ago, look at that, and it was. Can I get the exact date here?
Oh yeah,
But I,
usually they just show years on YouTube, right?
yeah, but usually I can get something January 12th, 2017. And
Okay.
then that came out in March, right? The first one. So that's February, March. The good thing is it's Nintendo. They're hot right now. People are buying things. So I'm not saying like, oh, they need that build up, but I guess for me, I just don't see it. So now I feel more validated. I just don't see it this year. I don't.
Mm.
I feel like they're going to let their game sell. I don't think they even want to confuse the market, even though the GA won't get a hold of it. But still, it's like, get what they got going right now, wait, and then you can sell it later on. So I'll say at least, I don't know when it will come out, but I'll say that I don't think the announcement is this year. I feel pretty confident on that.
Yeah, I think based on everything you just said there, I'm inclined to agree. I kind of forgot about that timeline, and I would have assumed they did it earlier. But like, yeah, I'm remembering now that they just had like a couple month window, pretty much. And like, I don't know, a lot of the people, like the hardcore fans, are already somewhat prepped for this console coming. It's been talked about for so long. Yeah, my only thought would be like, okay, well now compared to 2017, like Game Awards is huge. It's much bigger than it was then, and that does feel like a good prime slot for an announcement.
But it's not like
I also don't
Nintendo's
think
had like
that
a huge Game Awards present. Like they're there, but they're not. I don't think they ever. Like, there's been multiple times where that or Summer Games Fest where Nintendo's just not there, right?
I feel like there's something at Game Awards every time.
Yeah.
What I'm saying though is I don't think that they would want to announce the console there. I don't think they'd want to give that to Kia, and they'd want to do that on their own regard. But I feel like they might want to do it prior, and then like have a big trailer there. Like if Mario is the big game that's coming out, then they can drop a trailer there maybe. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll go for that side of things then and say that like maybe in November or something is when they show off the console for the first time, give us a breakdown, and then even aiming for that same window, but like just give it a bit more of a ramp up. I don't know. I guess they probably wouldn't want to do that. Like maybe they just wouldn't want to mess with that in terms of like limiting their Christmas sales of like people waiting on a console. So you know what? Now that I think about it more, I feel like maybe they just want to completely stay away from that and actually wait until next year to do something, and then just forego the Game Awards thing, because Game Awards will always be there. Next Game Awards they can announce a game there, and it'll still be a big deal. So maybe that's the thing to do, and then they can just announce like maybe a Game Awards like a Pokemon game can get revealed or something, but it just doesn't have even a console attached to it. It just is like a trailer for the game. Or they could even say like it's for the sequel console and then just like not even name it yet or something. So yeah, I feel like that maybe would be a pretty good step. And then I do feel like it is time for that Mario 3D sequel at this point. I would love a 3D Donkey Kong game, but I don't
think so. No, I think
I don't want to put any faith into that because I don't want to get disappointed. I think other things could be a new Mario Kart. Or an Animal Crossing. I think after how big
will be a happy man if you get that card. He's been waiting since 8 for 9. You know?
I mean, I don't know. Like if it's the same team as the team that made all those DLC tracks, I could see that needing longer for that to cook. But if it was like another Nintendo team making the next one, then I think they would definitely be ready to go, release date wise potentially for that next console. And that's like the beautiful one to drop on your console, the best selling game from your previous one. And then, I just mentioned like Animal Crossing. I feel like that probably went pretty high priority after the last game sold super duper well. And now that Splatoon 3, which is the same development team, or it has been for the last couple entries, as Animal Crossing, now that that's officially done, like they did their last DLC update there, maybe that would be the thing that they work on next or have been working on. Yeah. Which would be
Animal
pretty
Crossing
quick
is like a
turnaround.
must. It is, but that like I think just because it's sold gangbusters, it's like that's when
it
you
got
get
promoted to the S tier.
Yes,
of Nintendo franchises at this point.
You get the funds to make it like okay, let's get this game out a lot quicker than you would be. So
yeah, and then I mean, there's always a Pokemon thing, even if it's not the next mainline, like Sword and Shield, like the next duo console thing. Like there's something Pokemon. And then I feel like they'll probably spit out some like Fire Emblem remake.
Of course.
A lot of those have been rumored and haven't come out. And I feel like maybe they've been holding out on that to have more juice for like the launch cycle of the next console potentially. So
yeah.
What are you hoping for this console? Just like the console itself outside of games. Is there anything you really want them to change? Like, are you buying this thing day one kind of thing, or do you need to wait and see on like certain features?
I will be buying it, I'd say, within the first year, because I think the idea is, because I've already told the girls that they will get the Switch when I get the Switch too.
Yes.
I'm curious to see. I don't know if it's going to be as advanced as that, but I'm curious to see, like, with my PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 digital games, if it's backwards compatible, are those going to carry over, or is that just going to stay on my Switch? Which is fine, but I would love it if it had that. Like, I have a Nintendo account, but as we know, their accounts aren't like they aren't the greatest. You know,
Yeah.
it's not the first. So we'll see. So that's why the Switch one will still be protected because they got a lot of great games on there. They don't want the kids to go buck wild on, but it'll become more their console. So I think that like, and that would probably be like maybe like a I like it's gonna be for me, but make it like a Christmas present, like a family, like it's mine, but like they'll play it as well too.
Yeah.
So no, for me, I think it'd be more so when there's a game I really want that comes with it because I've said this before. You know, it's great. Game is always moving. There's always trailers where I go, wow, look at that CGI. Look at those graphics. It's great. But I've always said if we were to stop right now, I'd be completely fine where games got like graphically. You know, it's like I don't need anything more there now. It's just like advanced and different experiences. So that's where if it looks better, that's not a selling point. If which I do see, it's like smaller. That's not a selling point to me because I don't take mine. Mine stays docked always on the dock at home. I've never. When I used to landscape, I would take it there for my lunch breaks. But now that I work at home, it stays there, and the kids are definitely not taking that to school. So it's staying docked. So I think it's like if there's something really like a Luigi's Mansion 4, something a Travis franchise, this go around. If it was like because with Smash it was different because I was gonna buy it and then you guys got it, and then I biked over there at midnight, and then we played. And like I said, that whole first week, I remember just being at your house multiple times playing it, and that's where it's like, if I didn't. But here's an example: I bought the Switch because I did the same thing. We played Marvel Alliance, and went, I can't not have this game. I gotta buy a Switch for myself now. That's what I think will be Switch 2, where so maybe I'll take it back. Maybe it won't be for sure the first calendar year, but if there's something I really want on it, absolutely I will. But if it's more powerful, lighter, better graphics, nothing's really like selling me there because I'm happy with my Switch. I'm happy with Nintendo having like the type of animation, like their like it's not Pixar, but their style, the Nintendo animation just like looking better. Once it got 1080, I'm pretty good. Like these games still need like they look fantastic all the time, right? And there's still great games on the Switch I still haven't played. I never played Mario Odyssey. I'm not gonna get Jamboree right away. I still haven't played, Tears. Like there's things where it's like, if there's no game selling me, I'd rather just spend that another 100 on. I'm gonna finally play Tears of the Kingdom, right? So that's where I think I am. It's a game that would definitely sell me on the new console, but it will be bought. I'd say first year or two, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to pick it up no matter what, unless it's just an abomination. But I don't think they're going to do that this time around. I just feel like, there's different people who control Nintendo now than when the Switch one came out, and I feel like this new crop of Nintendo CEOs are like business to the core, keep things simple, no more weird gimmicks, just like. The Switch worked. Let's make a slightly improved version of that.
We can't have a Wii U situation, right?
Yeah.
And that's happened. They lived through that, and that's exactly why the Switch is what it is, because the Wii, you followed the Wii, which was this uber successful franchise seller, or a console franchise seller, to the Wii U to utter disappointment. I think even if it's not the same people, they would look at their history and go, yeah, that can't happen again. That we can't have the Switch 2 drop off, or if it's something, it's called the itch, which don't call your console that, but still like the itch U. That's where I'm with you, where they're gonna keep it. Like I could see the console after Switch 2 being a bit of a change up, because I don't know if Switch 2, but same thing. What if Switch 2 just has the same great sales that Switch 1 has? Why break it? I don't know if the gimmick is there is something that sucks. I do miss, like, man, what are they going to do to the console? Each console, right? What are they going to do this time? I think PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, I think like these consoles with a few variations of their design, it's what they're going to be going forward. We're not getting those big leaps because there's just too much risk to that. But I will always miss like seeing the Wii, seeing the Wii U, seeing the Switch, seeing the GameCube. Like, oh, look, even the PlayStation I felt had some different stuff, or Xbox, like even just stuff like the name. Like I hated Series X and Series X2. It's just like, what's it going to be? So I think all the consoles are pretty secured in what they're doing now going forward, kind of sadly, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as long as Nintendo wants to commit to having the console that is both the handheld and the home console, I don't think we're going to get much change at all. Yeah. And then when they finally...
And why would they? It's so successful, right? Like, people
exactly.
love that.
Like,
they got
the
double
hybrid
option.
method is really, really great and fits their brand perfectly. So yeah, like I feel like, especially now that there's Steam Deck and other competitors out there in that handheld space, like making things too, and obviously those aren't hybrid consoles, but I feel like they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Like they don't want to go back to like, okay, the handheld games are like not lesser, but like they're smaller games. They're more limited. The art style is more limited, and instead they like that like these handheld games are top quality like mainline console games as well. So yeah, until they're over that, which could be like a decade or more, I don't think we're really going to get anything too crazy.
I agree
from them, which is good. And yeah, like I just want like a little more consistency on performance. Like there's no reason that some games should be having the frame drops that they do.
Yeah.
For like some of these Nintendo games that don't even look that great. It's like, what's going on here, guys? Let's get that buttoned up there. I think mainly the other thing too is like I never, other than like small indie games, I never consider the Switch for like a third party game just because the games look a lot worse. And I'm not too much of a graphics snob, but they look a lot worse. They run a lot worse, or they're like only locked on the streaming version because otherwise the game can't run. And so I think at least if the Switch 2 can be powerful enough to at least do some of that, and like it's tricky because they're obviously not going to have Switch 2 on the level of like where a PS5 is or a Series X right now. So it's like it might not be the modern third-party games that are coming out. It might even be like last generations, but just it'd be nice if I could even consider those. But so far, it's like I just generally can't because the only third-party games that are coming are like super old games that I played 10 years ago, kind of thing. My biggest complaint with the Switch has always been the controllers. I hate the Joy-Cons. They suck.
Yeah.
They give me hand pain. I don't have any expectation they're going to change it. Like maybe
looks like they're smaller, these
modifications.
spec designs. It looks like
well,
they're
that's not good. I feel like it's going to be even worse than for my hand issues. But
I think more, I'll say like thinner, but like I think that you're going to stick that
and
Pro controller.
Hopefully they at least fix like the Joy-Con drift issues because I have had multiple controllers that I've had to just throw in the junker. So that's and I know a lot of people have. And then I think on terms of the Switch front, like a lot of people always want like themes, which I think is fun. It's fun to have themes on your console. I don't really need that though. I really just want the eShop to like run better. That's performance wise the thing that runs the worst on the Switch is the freaking shop, and it's kind of crazy that they've let that happen, but they probably just can only do so much about it with what they've kind of built it up for. So hopefully the new eShop is much better to use and is like less laggy. But yeah, I think for me, for Nintendo, it's like it's and with everyone, it just comes down to the games. That's what's gonna make me buy these things. And so I don't know. I'll probably get a Switch 2 no matter what, but just because I know that there's gonna be a lot of games coming. But I am very curious to see what that opening roster or first year lineup of games is gonna be like. The first exclusive stuff, I'm very curious what that's gonna look like. Even Prime 4 looks really good, and I don't know if that's gonna be only on Switch 2, but like I definitely would want to pick that game up. So
I bet that would be a Zelda Breath of the Wild situation where it's a double if it comes out at the same time.
I think so, yeah.
That's what I see. Yeah, and lots of people, including myself, I bought Breath of the Wild on the Wii U because I wasn't buying a Switch at that point. I wasn't working, so I wasn't going to drop whatever $400 on it. But I think like there's a huge, as we've seen with PlayStation, I think Nintendo will be the same thing of like, don't just abandon that fan base right away because there's still tons of people. Doesn't matter if it's like a cheaper console. There's just people that can't afford to get another console, or if they have a bunch of kids, like a bunch of Joy-Cons. So it's like we're gonna rock with the Switch, especially if it's not broken. Or Switches still sell all the time. Not all of those are just people's that have died. There's probably people that find like, oh, let's finally get a Nintendo, and it's like, why would they just right away get the Switch 2? So I feel like, as we've talked about many times, PlayStation, I think they'll do the same thing of like, let's not abandon the Switch 1 fan base just because we've got something new, because that can fall flat on your face. So I think if the console is in the first 6 months of 2025, God, we're already there, and same thing as Metroid, then I think it's definitely a dual release. So
yeah, I'm really so curious to see what that first Nintendo first party game is that is only on the sequel console, because I feel like as soon as they switch over to Switch 2, I'm sure we'll see a flood of third-party developers releasing things that can only run on the Switch 2, and that's where you'll see a lot of exclusive games, or not exclusive games, but like exclusive
to that console, right?
Like it'll be on Switch, but like it can only run on the Switch 2 kind of thing. Yeah. But I feel like it'll probably be a while before Nintendo drops a game that is exclusive in that way. Like maybe a couple of years, kind of similar like what the PS5 was for the most part, with the exception of like Ratchet and Demon Souls. It was like, oh yeah, God of War, Horizon, like these things are still on our previous console as well. And I think they'll want to do that same sort of thing. But yeah, I'm so curious to see what that first Nintendo first party game is that they decide to lock it off and say, Switch 1 cannot run this thing. Sorry, you got to upgrade. So that'll
could very well be Zelda. We're talking about that, right? And if there's no immediate time frame for next mainline Zelda, that could easily be that in 3 to 4 years. So
yeah, very true. Okay, let's take our last ad break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Probably a shorter final topic here, but I want to talk a little bit about the PS5 with you in two ways. One is just looking at next year's release calendar for PlayStation, and then also I want to talk about this like the PS5 Pro a little bit. So first of all, what was your thoughts on the PS5 Pro? You haven't been on Sidequest since that announcement.
I know.
So what do you think about that thing?
I looked at the calendar. It's just the way it works out. I feel like that happens not this time because I won't be on for a little bit. I'll be on before I leave, but I feel like I'll be like on 3 weeks in a row, and then I'm gone for a whole month. 3 weeks in a row, like I did in the summer, where it's like, oh, I'm here. But yeah, so for me, I feel like sometimes people might listen to me and hate me. I'm not trying to defend big corporations, big businesses. With the price reveal, I was shocked that everyone else was shocked because I just thought, like, when I saw that, it's funny because I saw it, oh yeah, and then I logged back on because I'm not on Twitter as much as I used to, and I just saw my timeline and podcast just like, look at this outrageous. I guess I just always thought like it was going to be for a very niche type of people. It's the people that are the anti me that are, oh, I need. If there is a megabyte difference of graphics, I need that, and I need to pay for that. I think for years we talked about Yumi and Briggs, like PC stuff. Like I have other issues with PC, but same thing. I've never needed like, oh, I need the prime, absolute best version of that. I am more that way with movies. That's a different aspect, but with games, it's just because I'm always like, oh, these things are beautiful already. So for me, the price, I was like, I just kind of expected it, and it's something that same thing of. I would never buy unless my PlayStation broke. Cause sure, if it broke, I go, okay, I'll go get that. That's a lot of money, and even then, it depends where my PlayStation broke. Cause the rumor we'll talk about, but the rumor is like it's looking like 2028 is like maybe like the year PS6 might come out, right? So it's still another 4 years. If my PS5 were to maybe break now, let's say today, maybe I'd consider a Pro because, oh, I'm still going to be with it for a while. But if it were to break and it's like, I just need to hold it for another year, I'm probably not going to drop that because, sure, if I like the great, like, want to see what the more powerful console does, bigger space, which is great because I'm always running out of space on these consoles.
What would be the price point for you to do the upgrade from your PS4 if you could trade in? Like, what would be that price point?
I think once I saw it in the wild, depending what exactly it would be. So yeah, I'd say like a 200 to 300. Like that's me trading my PS5, then I pay additional, right? You're saying? Yeah. I think like 300, 350 is like maybe the max I could get to because I wouldn't feel bad because that's like I'm buying a new console, but I'm getting a much higher one. I get why people definitely wouldn't want to pay that, but that's the thing where it's just like. I think it'd be different if this was the PS6 or they said going forward, the PS5, you can't buy them. It's just pros and it has to be this. I would understand that, but you still got the PS5 right there. It's not going anywhere. So you don't have to get that. And eventually if you are a graphic junkie, that will go down in price. It will be there, but yeah, so I don't have a need for it. Luckily my PS4, it's, no longer on the floor, guys. Everyone that watched TV Day, it's sitting on my TV stand. It's now my TV bedroom one. So that's still running. My PS5, I think will still be running. So I've had lots of luck with these, like all the consoles I bought since the Geek First era. So luckily I've not had anything I have to rebuy. So yeah, I don't think I will, but I will not lie that I, for a second, very much, and I lucky didn't do it, but I thought about getting the 30-year anniversary. Now, luckily, it looks like it's very hard to get that. There was like 8-hour wait rooms for people. But I did go in the lobby at one point. It gave me an hour, and I was like, that's even too much for me. But that thing. The only reason I talked myself out of it was, Travis, most of the time you have your PlayStation in the glass behind the cabinet. Don't get it. But that look of like the PlayStation 1, which I owned on the PS5, is like, oh man, that looked like a thing of beauty. So I had the Green Goblin talking to me of like, oh, just buy it. You can trade in your console. Like, so I was thinking about making
it's funny
plunge.
You say that. I had the same thing where I've been holding out on the PS5. Yeah. And I saw that, and not the Pro, like just the base one. I was like,
yeah,
man, this seems like a good time to buy if I'm gonna buy it all. And then I was like, it's just like it's just a different gray, it's just the PS1 gray. Like I don't need this that bad. I've waited out this long, so I advised against it, but I definitely considered it as well.
Yeah,
I think I'm ready at this point. I'm really curious to see what the Black Friday deal is going to be this year because last year it was pretty much just like you get Spider-Man 2 for free. Like it was the same console price, but you just get the one game thrown in there, which is, that's like $90-$100 worth of value, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not bad. But I'm hoping it's a little bit better this year, especially with the Pro on the horizon. Maybe
That
they'd
could
be
help,
willing
yeah.
to drop the price a little bit more on that. Because I don't like want a free game, because games go on sale so much.
Mm-hmm.
That, like I don't know, I just want like $100 off the console, and then I'll go
Yeah.
pick it up at that point, kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see what that's looking like. But the reason is because I feel like next year is gonna be a pretty decent year for PS5. Like in terms of first party things, Ghost of Yotai. I don't actually know how to pronounce it yet. Have you heard it pronounced in the wild?
I've not heard it pronounced either. So Ghost
Well,
2.
the new Ghost game coming out next year,
Mm-hmm.
and then I feel like is the year for Wolverine next year?
Ask
Gosh, I
me.
feel like it might be.
Ask me. Well, I was gonna say, would they?
Spider-Man just came out last year, but I feel like Insomniac, probably has multiple teams. They just cook so quickly as well.
It all depends on a few things. I was gonna say, ask me after Game Awards, but then would they maybe want to reveal Wolverine, like the big reveal on like a what's their big one? Is it the showcase or the state of play?
The showcase, yeah.
The showcase, which they haven't done. They just did. That was a showcase, right? A couple weeks ago.
No, that was a state of play.
The state of play.
When was
Okay.
the last showcase? I think they did a showcase in like the E3 season of this year, but it was like kind of underwhelming, I think.
Okay, maybe that was it. So maybe a bigger one. Also, if we have any more confirmation on what this Venom game and if it still or is exists, because if that exists, then I think
Right.
Wolverine is still cooking a little bit. I think they would be smart considering Wolverine Deadpool is going to be one of the biggest movies of the
Yeah.
year, biggest radar movie, to get something out there, even just a trailer at Game Awards as a reminder, because it is crazy that all we've had is the Logan at the bar and the Schnink. Now, for me, it's not as bad because so much of that leaked stuff came out. I feel like I've
we saw a
seen.
lot.
Yeah, I feel like okay, I know what this game is and I'm ready for it, but I think they might want to wait till it's ready to go. I could see that. I could see that being fall though. I could, because it's like I'm not sure when or if you're bringing it up, but like the Death Stranding thing, I think everyone thought that was, unless Kojima's just being a little trickster. But the fact they said the game's only 30 to 40% done, I
Because
think
that original trailer had 2025 on it, right? For
I don't
Death
think it
Stranding,
did.
didn't it? Let me take
Don't forget, no, it's Death Stranding on the beach. Dylan Muss. Is it on the beach or the beaches? What is it again? I've forgotten the stupid. Yeah, on the beach. But and that did make sense because he has that OD game coming with Xbox, right? And that got revealed first, so I could see that
I
coming.
think it technically was thrown in 2025, but as you mentioned, there was that article recently with Kojima where he said it was 30-40% along, which does not seem like next year would be its release date.
Yeah, unless, like I said, he's just like having some fun with us. But I feel like that's longer down. So I think Wolverine, there's a possibility because they gotta, they get that marketing going then. But I guess at the same day, I think Wolverine's gonna sell. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't think they get the marketing machine too much. So
yeah, and I don't need to like comprehensively go through every studio of theirs, but like I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's any other first party games I can think of that would be coming out next year. Nothing's coming to mind in terms of like the huge releases for PlayStation, but I'm sure there'll be some things that are coming out, some smaller things as well along the way.
Yeah.
But Ghost, we didn't get a chance to talk about this reveal yet. So I guess, are we calling it the Ghosts series now? Or the Ghost of series?
yeah,
Now that it's going to be different game to game based on where we are?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's just the Ghost series, and I'm of two minds of it because I don't want them to force a story on Jin, right, and be like, well, because I feel like his story was pretty complete. Maybe they go back to, but I feel like it was complete. But at the same time, I did fall in love with that character and would like to see more, like what happens after. But if they don't feel it suffices, that's fine. I think it does feel almost a little too samey to Assassin's Creed, which is funny because Assassin's Creed, they're doing their ghosts and whatnot. So it is just like, all right, every time we're going to get a new location, new decade, and then new ghost. And all right, like I think there's pros and cons to it, and I think I won't know until after I see number 2. And I think for me, I have all the faith that I think they'll probably knock out of the park and make, oh, this is a great idea because, again, game looked gorgeous. I like a lot of the setting. I don't mind following a new female ghost and seeing what her story is, what everything is. Because, like I said, if there was nothing for Jin to do, don't force a story on that character. It will just feel like it'll be drawn out. So, but at the same time, that's the risk where, let's say this game comes out and you don't connect this character, you go, oh, I miss Jin, because that was my thing with Red Dead 2, where I did not like Arthur Morgan. So I really did not connect with that game as much, where if it would have been John Marston and another adventure, maybe it's forcing a story, but I already been bought in, right? I already have that. So that's where the risk you do run of, oh, I really miss Jin here. So, but I think game-wise, it's looking great. And kind of, they knew they were, we knew they were working on it, but I felt like usually we get a rumor from somebody of like, hey, trailer's coming soon, and just kind of came out of nowhere. I was surprised by
Yeah.
it. So but yeah, looks stunning. Some of that snow stuff, I can't remember. I don't think we got snow stuff in the first Ghost game. Did? If we did, it was
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
then I haven't played in a while. I just feel like this had like a like I remember with the fox running around, because I remember you'd see the foxes like
It was like the
pause,
last
but
island on, or I forget if it was a separate island, but it was like the topmost part of the Tsushima map. It was like the
Okay.
last area you went to, and it was
Okay.
pretty small relative to like the like Act 1, Act 2 areas.
And this
So
just looked
was
like
the
it had a
smaller area.
bigger section, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
But yeah, design of the character looked cool, so I'm ready to get back in that world. I'm really hoping Legends comes along with it too, like some revamped cool stuff, because I'm ready to get back into that too. That's one of, as far as the Geekverse era, one of my favorite multiplayer games. We had tons of fun on that
Yes,
game.
definitely.
I loved it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm very excited to have a new protagonist character that we're working with here. One is it's always very contrived in games like this when like the sequel game has Jin back at square one, doesn't know any
Yeah.
stances, doesn't have any weapons, and like you can have a reason why he lost his equipment, but like why does he not know anything? You
Yeah.
know, like that's kind of weird. So I
The
think it makes
Aloy
sense
problem.
story wise. Yes, exactly. Like every game problem. Tears of the Kingdom problem. Like this
Yes,
is
yeah.
just all over the place. So I think it was a good idea from that perspective, but also, yeah, like Legends really was like, man, all four of these characters feel so different and cool, even if it is like just taking a lot of the moveset from the base game, splitting it out, and then like adding unique things on. But like they really did all feel very different, and so I think I'm excited, looking forward to seeing how this character is going to feel and control kind of different and new from Jin, even if it maybe is going to be just very much the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. I think it's cool. I think it's a 200-year time jump.
300, I think it was.
300-year time jump.
Yeah, 300.
That's something that is worried is not the right word, but I don't want us to proceed so far with like the technology of the world
agree.
that there's like guns and stuff. So I don't think we saw any guns in this trailer or anything, but that is one thing I'm slightly concerned about. I really like you have blow darts, you have bow and arrow, but like we're not getting into firearms here. I don't really want that for Ghost of Tsushima, for
I agree.
just the Ghost series
Just
in
a
general.
Ghost series, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I'm curious. I'm curious what other things would come with a 300-year time gap, given that kind of era. I'm not like a history buff, and don't tend to be like, oh, in the year 1600 is when like this or that was
The
invented. and that
musket
could be,
became a big deal.
yeah, that could be implemented into here. So we'll see what
cannonball.
happens there. But even just like the setup of the world and the towns and like the level of technology, I hope it's very much the same. But I do think 300 years gives them a lot of room to play with a lot in terms of story stuff or other changes. I don't think they'll really jump into mythology. I think they are going to kind of stay away from that in terms of like adding enemy types that are giant ogres and stuff. Like I don't think they're going that direction,
No,
even
leave
though
that
I would
for
be totally
Legends.
down for it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I like that in Legends. Legends is fine because it's like the tale, like urban myths and stories of old for samurai. I don't need that. Would be something for me that would be a down point if in the main game it's like all of a sudden Ghost is fighting an eagle that has swords, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
no, I don't need this here. Like there's many games that can do that. They have such a good distinct style here, right? And
Yeah.
so
And I feel like if you go 300 years in the future, you'd probably go further away from that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
if you did like a prequel game, like maybe that's where you'd implement mythology. I'm not sure. I posed this question to the boys last week. Are you worried, or like what do you think of the fact that now with the Assassin's Creed Shadows delay and this game given a 2025 date, that they're going to come out the same year, and we don't know when Ghost is coming out, but I assume like summer at the earliest. But I don't know. Do you think there's going to be any stomping on each other's toes for one or the other here coming out the same year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's enough people where we've talked about this before where I'm not saying hardcore fans like Taylor for AC. I'm saying, let's say people that were big fans of Assassin's Creed, wanting them to go to Japan, Ghost beat them to it. And that's kind of the franchise. And they loved it. Where Assassin's Creed, you kind of know what you're getting. I think it's maybe not a little too late, but I feel like there's a bit of that. So it's kind of like, why I'm not gonna say play the imposter game because that sounds mean, but it just feels like Ghost already did it, and I won't say perfected, but they did a damn good rendition of what that could be. And I don't think, unfortunately, for Assassin's Creed, just the way they make their games, I don't think they can live up to even what Ghost 1 was with Shadows. So I think it
Mm-hmm.
will, and I think you will have people, unless Assassin's Creed gets very, very good. Like, I can't remember that one game, which it was. I don't know if that was Odyssey or whatnot. There's one of those Assassin's Creed games the last 5 years that came out, had like really great reviews, and then it kind of went back to the way it is. If Shadows is that, then I could see maybe, and people might not get, because I guarantee you, either way, there's going to be, like, I won't say a winner, but someone will lean one way or the other, and I think there will be a preference. I don't know if people have the room in their life for two games that are very similar that cost $80 to $100
Mm-hmm.
within 6 months of each other, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. And for me, it's already like I always said that with Shadows. I was with Taylor. I think when we started Geek First, we were all like, oh yeah, if they do one in Japan, like I definitely get that. And then Ghost did it, and it's like, well, I don't need to play Shadows anymore, especially with that coming out. Even then, like I could have been more inclined because like Ubi plays the thing. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's a bad idea, as they talked about last week with the Star Wars sales, like the $15 for a game, 15-20. It's like,
Yeah.
but at the same point, I go, no, I don't want to. There's other games I'd play, and I know Ghost 2 is probably gonna be, I think, a superior experience. So yeah, I do think people will either wait, or the Assassin's Creed hype will rise. They'll buy it, and then Ghost 2 will go away. And that's the other thing too that you got to think about from a business standpoint. That is the reverse, where I don't think having a new main character helps Ghost, though. I think having Jin, that character, back,
Mm.
that does help a little bit. Where I do think there's a few people that might go, I don't need to know the next chapter because Jin's story is over. I think people have that even connection with Aloy, right? Where even myself, after saying I don't think I'll get 3, now as time's gone on, I'm like, like I maybe would want to know how her story ends, right? And I was not even that positive on the second game, but you do get connected to these characters,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing with Jin. Might go, a new character in Japan. Well, I can do the Assassin's Creed, so that's where I think it's gonna be interesting. But I hope they just both play well and do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm in the same boat as you, where I feel like Ghost will take away from some of
Mm-hmm.
Shadow's potential sales, and so it's good for Shadows that it is coming out first, presumably, unless a Ghost somehow Shadow drops and comes out in January. But I mean, I wonder if part of the announcement timing from Sony being slick business people is like I wonder if that's something that they were aiming for. Is Shadows is supposed to come out next week, or was it November?
I think it was
I guess
November.
it's November, so it's supposed to be
Yeah.
next month. And then coming out here at the end of September is when they announced this Ghost game. So I wonder if they were trying to get that out there at that time for a specific reason. One of those
Mm-hmm.
reasons being to get ahead of Shadows and just let people know, like, hey, our sequel's coming out pretty soon. If you want to just hold off a little bit longer and get
Yeah.
that instead, especially when earlier this year, like they also released Rise of the Ronin, so like another very similar sort of game
Yeah.
on PlayStation. So a lot of similarities there, big time for these kinds of open world Japanese combat games. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I also know that I have felt kind of weird about some of uh, these first party sequel
I was gonna
games.
say, is this
Like
finally gonna make it
yeah,
happen?
it's been like
Or are
up
you
and
gonna go,
down where Horizon like didn't work for me as much. Spider-Man 2, I obviously haven't played it yet, but like that was one of the reasons I didn't end up buying a PS5. I just wasn't like super hyped on it.
Mhm.
But I did really love Ragnarok. Miles Morales was a bit of a letdown for me, but that's also like it was a half step game, it wasn't like a full thing. So I don't know. There's definitely a lot to weigh, but I am more excited for this one than like some of these other titles, I suppose. So I don't know. I don't think this one's gonna have that same effect for me that some of these other ones did. I'm also very excited for Death Stranding too. So it's not like I don't know. I can't be interested in these sequels, but I think
Plus,
I
you
just
got
need to see
Astro as well
something.
too. You can dip your toes into as well.
Yeah, that's
right?
going to be probably a day one PS5
Yeah.
purchase whenever I get that console. That game looks amazing. So yeah. Any other PlayStation thoughts at the moment, or I don't know? Do you have anything else to say on the Death Stranding thing, or more just like I'm excited
No,
for it, but it makes
I'm
sense.
excited. That was kind of a gut punch though, because I had my heart set on that was for sure next year, which now I don't know. I thought for sure I was getting in that mode. I was like, I can't wait. But Hideo's got a lot going on. He's got OD. He literally just signed with WME, which is like a film. Like he's ripped by an agency now to do film.
Right.
So like I always wonder how much longer the whole film and game combo is gonna last. And we've said, like, when's he just gonna make a movie? And I feel like he wants to. I feel like he's slowly like moving over, and he's signed with a film agency. So I would say, everyone, like, you never know, enjoy OD and Death Stranding, because there could be a future in 5 years where he makes a movie and it's a hit, and then that could be what he goes
And he's
on
a
to,
film
right?
director,
Yeah, so like, and that happens all the time, or vice versa with other mediums, right? So that was just the only disappointment. I thought for sure it was next year, and now it's like, oh, but there's a lot going on next year. Like, I always forget, like, they keep saying it's gonna happen. So Grand Theft Auto, that's like a huge, like,
Yeah.
that's a time sink right there, and that's where it's like with the PS5 and the PS6, it's like that's half the battle they have, because they know, we've talked about this before, when Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, and I promise you, there are people that do not have a new Xbox or PlayStation. They will buy a new console for that game. Grand Theft Auto is a system seller, and when they buy a new console, it's likely going to be PS5. So it's almost like it's non-exclusive, but like it pushes a lot of their consoles, because it's just a massive game. So that's where they could kind of afford, like, just a Ghost, and there could even be another game like Astro. Like you said, there's a lot of other companies, whatever they may be working on, like whatever team.
They
might
the
be
Horizon remake coming out.
the Horizon remake, and there's always I don't think it's next year, but there's always this scuttlebutt of Last of Us 3 that's picking up a lot of steam lately. Like, those rumors keep coming out a lot more, so Naughty Dog's doing
I think
something.
that's gonna be years away still, but that's
I
my
do.
prediction.
No, I do too, but I mean, like, starting of teas and stuff, like, I think it's just going to be a better year next year for PlayStation than it has been the past. And even then, that doesn't matter. Their consoles are still selling like
This year was like
gangbusters,
an off year in terms of like first party presence, but they still had a ton of big, exclusive, interesting, cool games. So
they
I
had
don't
fucking
know.
Concord happen, but they're okay. Like that. That's
They had Conquered
something-
them, and they thankfully had Astrobot come out 2 weeks later.
Yep.
So
Yeah, like, that's the thing. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see what they do next year. So
yeah, very cool. I feel like next year's the year of me finally getting the PS5.
finally,
So I feel like that's,
watch Ghost just get tanked reviews. It's just gonna be what a disappointment, and then
that would be sad.
That'd
That'd
but
be very
Astro.
sad. But Astro, it's always there. Thank you for joining me, Travis. This is a fun
Absolutely.
discussion. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Next week, I don't even know. I can't remember what's going on next week with Sidequest, but something interesting and cool, I'm sure. So check it out. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.